Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. We have our fourth annual Beginning Again retreat happening on October 21st. We are going live at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're also recording it. So if you can't join us live, it's an archived resource for you to help you adjust to life after caregiving ends. And I'm happy to have one of our presenters join me today. Danielle's here with us. And Danielle is a financial planner who focuses on serving caregiving families. And she's also, most recently, a former family caregiver. So Danielle, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to present. Originally, when I asked to present, I was a family caregiver at that time, and I've worked with many family caregivers through their after caregiving stages, but I didn't really understand what that was from my own perspective. And now that I'm kind of thick in the weeds of the after caregiving experience, it feels quite different from what I've seen from other perspectives, just because it's my own experience rather than walking through somebody else's.
Yeah, which I think is such a good point. What we focus on during our retreat is really creating a safe place for you to feel what you're feeling and to really receive resources and insights. You know what's best about how to manage life after caregiving, just like you knew what was best during your caregiving experience. And we're here to really support you as you take your next steps. So what's interesting, I think, Danielle, is you're really going to help us with the financial piece, which is very important. So tell us what attendees will gain after attending your workshop.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm so excited to get some tools under my belt and learn from others, the other speakers, but it's as well as help people through rebuilding financially after they've been through that family caregiving period. As I've noticed, my spending has been a little bit up the last couple weeks because we talk about unexpected expenses during caregiving, but I don't feel like we talk as much about unexpected expenses when you're grieving. Like, I'm more prone to go to yogurt mill because that's what makes me happy, go for yogurt, than I normally would when I was caregiving, or I'm having expenses like copays for doctor's appointments because I'm now making a real big effort to take care of myself now that caregiving is over. So, and then you have like grief expenses because just you're grieving and you want to make extra, it sometimes just comes naturally to call, to have expenses because you're grieving. And I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about rebuilding, like making sure your financial health is secure, that you're rebuilding your savings, you're paying off debt that you may have dipped into when you were family caregiving. And what are your next steps? I've noticed that my identity has shifted a lot since I started caregiving. When I was caregiving, I was thinking about, like, how do I protect that other person and how do I make sure that their health is taken care of? But I didn't necessarily focus on myself as much as I should have. And so now there's a big shift between, caring for someone I loved, and now I got to take care of myself and get myself straightened up.
Interestingly enough, you kind of gave me a teaser for my own workshop, which is kicking off the retreat. We're going to write 6-word stories about those two pieces, what was important during caregiving and what's important now, because there is a shift. And I think whenever there's a shift, you have discomfort, there's uncertainty. You're trying on a new pair of shoes, so to speak. Something that I love that you talk about is spending money as you grieve. And we had a presenter meeting earlier this month, and you brought this up, and it was so fascinating to me because I was able to say, oh my gosh, I have spent a little bit more money and this is what I bought. And I think it would be interesting for our attendees at the retreat to talk about how they've spent money differently now that caregiving has ended, and what has been one purchase that they made after caregiving has ended that they never would have thought about purchasing during caregiving. I think that's fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah,
So
that would
is,
be
yeah,
interesting to talk about. Yeah.
yeah. What's a purchase that you've made that you thought, wow, I would have never thought I would spend the money on this?
Yeah, long story short, when my grandmother was on life support, the nurse said that my grandmother's hair looked like a strawberry blonde hair. And my daughter has some red streaks that we didn't know exactly where it was coming from. And I thought to myself, why don't we just get a 23andMe test and test it out? So that was kind of like the item or purchase that you're talking about that I would have never thought about getting before, but now it's interesting to know what your genetics are and the history and background of yourself, which I was deep into caregiving. I was focusing on caregiving, not what my genetics could be.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting when it's almost like you have some space that has freed up in your head and you can think about things that you just didn't have the space to think about before. It's pretty fascinating. So you are 4 weeks, 6 weeks since your grandmother's death?
Yeah, about 3.5 weeks or so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say has been the hardest part over these past 4 weeks?
I think it's not being able to grieve on my own time. I feel like it's like I went from being really thick in the weeds of caregiving, and now I'm like really deep into the next steps of my life, as well as like closing the estate and kind of moving on from there. And so it's like I haven't really departed from caregiving or that shift in my life yet, because I'm so focused on like making sure the estate is distributed properly and closing the estate so that I can move on. So I think that's the hardest part, is not being able to grieve. Like for example, at the funeral, I was in charge of the reception. And so I was more focused on how many people are going to attend the reception, like getting a head count ahead of time, like what are we going to drink? What are we going to eat? Like what's going to be the dessert? And I wasn't really thinking about, when is my time to grieve? I don't even kind of like that whole day kind of seems like a blur, because I was more focused on the aspects and arrangements of the funeral than I was actually grieving.
Something that I don't think people understand until you go through it is how exhausting it is to manage the services and all that's required immediately after someone dies. And I think oftentimes it's harder on the family sometimes because you are taking care of other people after something really horrible has happened. Someone has died. And then you're trying to figure out, how do we honor the person who has died and then take care of those who are coming to honor that person? It's exhausting. It's exhausting. Okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing you on October 21st. Again, we're recording our retreat. So if you can't join us, no worries. You can watch the archive. And to register for this free event, just go to caringourway.com. We do have CEUs. You can earn up to 3 CEUs, and that's a flat fee of $20, and you pay for your CEUs after our event ends. Okay, Danielle, I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple days at our Beginning Again retreat.
I'm excited to see you all.
And I just thought of something. So how can our listeners and viewers be in touch with you? What's your website address?
Yeah, it's Spark, SPARK, like the fire, and then dash FIN, like a dolphin fin.com. And they can check us out there. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn under my name if you'd like to learn more about me and my journey.
Yeah, one of the things that we like to do at our events is share our LinkedIn profiles for our speakers, because we do want to stay in touch with you. We want to continue the conversation beyond our event. Okay, thanks so much, Danielle. See you in a couple of days.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay, thanks everybody. Again, our Beginning Again retreat is October 21st. Starts at 10 a.m. Eastern time. You can register at caringourway.com. And you can also watch the archive at caringourway.com, which will post on the 23rd of October. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.